So it's been a while. I initially intended to deliver fleet statuses every month. However, bad things occurred. But I've decided that it'll be what it's going to be. So let's run through the months and see what's taken place. 5-month summary. Let's go. And no, we're not including June and July because they were way too hectic. I'm going to need a separate video for that. Late December 2024. This was around the time that my last fleet status was created. 5991 at Stengel got the local scheme. 1534, 4570, and 7458 were loaned to College Point. 9 next gens were ready to be shifted out of Eastchester scrap for scrapping in Long Island. The last old gen hybrid in existence, 3525, a former Baisley Park unit, was sent to Eastchester scrap on December 31st, along with 4119, a former Baisley Park next gen, which was at Zariga for a while. It also came to our attention that retired Flatbush RTS 5050 had been preserved in upstate New York. A few temporary express bus loans were shifted around Staten Island. Last time we left off, in terms of New York City Transit Next Gens, Manhattanville had 14, Stengel had 32, Fresh Pond had 6, East New York had 6, Flatbush had 11, Eastchester had 7, which were now retired, sidelined on December 19th, and 4247 and 4485 have been retired, with 4487 awaiting retirement in the depot, which actually left 4 next gens at Eastchester awaiting their fate. 4486, 4488, 4506, and 4588. Baisley Park had 7 next gens left. JFK had 14 next gens left. LaGuardia had 35 lithium next gens left, with 4498 actually being retired. At Zariga, 4551 and 4589 were now present, while 4097, 4105, and 4365 were sent from Zariga to Eastchester scrap. At the time, they had 9 next gens or more, which were listed here. Kingsbridge had 4 XE40s, Michael J. Quill had 22, and Grand had 24. And here were the Conehead assignments, just to get everyone on the same page. Alright, January 2025. West Farms received several loans, ranging from LFSAs to next gens, and even XDE40s and LFS hybrids. At least 7 units listed here were loaned to West Farms on January 14th. Kingsbridge had received a few XDE40s and LFS HEVs as loans for rush hour trippers. LFSAs 5339, 5835, and 5898 were loaned to Quill. By the end of January, Michael J. Quill had 2 2017 XD60s still on loan from Hale. XE40 4952 returned to Quill from Kingsbridge on January 15, 2025, after being sent to the JFK vendor twice. This officially marked the end of the XE60 era for Kingsbridge, for now. Tuskegee got next-gen loans from Manhattanville as they usually do. Hale used a few loans from Quill on the M7, XE40s 4993 and 5000, and XD40s 7596 and 7614. XD60 6077 also went to the depot as a day loan on January 17th. At Stengel, next gens 4093, 4355, 4378, 4571, 4580, 87, 98, and 4601 were received. That bumped them up from 32 to 40 units. 7766 and 8761 were loaned to the depot between January 17th and 27th. MCI 2299 did a trip on the Sim 35, which was pretty cool. The last 2019 LFS at Castleton, 8714, was out of service from October 7th to January 7th, pretty much for 3 months. It re-entered service on January 7th, 2025, ran on the S78 school tripper and the S46, then was transferred out of Castleton to Jamaica the next day, replaced by Jamaica's last 8900 series Conehead, 8937, on January 8th. Its first trip on Staten Island took place on the S48 on January 9th the next day. Now Castleton has 23 Coneheads, and Jamaica has 23 2019 LFSs and 41 Coneheads. Jamaica has 8694 to 8718 without 8708-09 due to accidents and fires. So this is the way things were from around January to June. However, in July and August, these 2019 LFSs would find their way back to Staten Island, with some of them going to Charleston. The first trip 8714 did at Jamaica was on the Q77 on January 16th. It was one of 3 IDA LFSs to be fixed up, 8702-03 and 8714. East New York got 4452 from Fresh Pond, along with 4394, 4397, 4417, and 4541 from LaGuardia. 4473, which was retired on December 23, 2024 due to an accident, was sent to Eastchester scrap. 4200 got into an accident on January 2nd, but was able to be fixed and run for a couple more months. The depot at this point had 11 NextGens listed here. Now regarding Fresh Pond, NextGen 4187 briefly visited Fresh Pond on January 22nd to conduct a run on the B7. Ironically, that will be the last time a NextGen actually ran on a Fresh Pond route, at least until June 9th, when 4478 ran on the B54 and 4541 ran on the B52, East New York Loans to Fresh Pond. Somewhat similar case to what happened with the old gens at Manhattanville, where some Hale old gens were among the last to run on Manhattanville routes. Out of the last 6 remaining NextGens, Fresh Pond retired 4047, sent 4093, 4355, and 4378 to Casey Stengel, sent 4452 to East New York, and by January 14th that left Fresh Pond with 1 NextGen in service, 4104. 4104 was thought to be retired on December 27th, until it was revealed to have been doing operator training as of December 30th. For a second time, it was believed to have been retired on January 19th, then said to have been reactivated on January 21st. Finally, it was declared to be officially retired on February 1st. Therefore, on that day, we were able to officially mark the end of an era of the Fresh Pond NextGens from 2011 to 2025. 4104's last trip took place on an early morning run on January 16th on the B20. East New York and Flatbush NextGen eras have outlasted Fresh Pond somehow. It's crazy how East New York, a depot that ended their NextGen era way before Fresh Pond did, ended up keeping NextGens around much longer than Fresh Pond. Also crazy how Fresh Pond has gotten a ton of NextGens from MTA Bus, and now they have none. Just goes to show you how quickly things can change within this agency. Now 4047 and 4355 were excluded from Fresh Pond in the days leading up to this, between January 14th and the 17th. And we also had some permanent moves like 7092 from East New York to Fresh Pond, and 7133 to Fresh Pond as well. Ulmer Park used C40LFs 460 and 481 as loans on January 6th, then loaned out 2012 XD60s 4748 and 4784 to Gleason on January 29th. 120 Ulmer Park buses were held out of service on January 30th due to poor condition. As for the XE40s, 4970, 5020, and 5024 had arrived at the JFK vendor. 4986 was returned to Kingsbridge on January 8th. 5002 ran on the M11 on January 9th, fulfilling a new trip brought by congestion pricing. 4968 was delivered to Quill, while 4970, 5023-24, and 5030 were delivered to Grant. 5030's delivery was special, marking the first 2025 XE40 to be delivered to MTA property for a 187 XE40 order between 5030 to 5216. This order will be coming with an option order of 193 XE40s, and then will be followed by a 265 XE40 order. Meanwhile, 5024's delivery marked the numerically highest XE40 unit in the 60 XE40 order to arrive. 5024 entered service on January 23rd on the B60, while 5030 entered service on February 13th on the B62. 5012, the unit which Grant had received in May of 2024, entered service on January 21st, 2025. So now, Quill had 23 XE40s and Grant had 28. Meanwhile, XE40s continue to test at East New York and Charleston, paying both depots occasional visits. 4981 conducted some training on January 21st on the S74, took a trip to the JFK vendor and Grant for maintenance between January 21st and 24th, then towards Staten Island on January 29th. XE40 4981 entered service on January 29th on the S78 and S55 out of Charleston, marking the first Excelsior to run on Staten Island in years, as well as the first electric. We also had these interesting trips to Jamaica and East New York take place, because East New York now had Chargers at this point. At Eastchester, MCI D4500CL 3458 was given to them from College Point, 3422 was later retired as well. Meanwhile, Zariga's 2007 MCI D4500CL, 4306, an ex-Charleston unit, which hadn't been in service since May of 2021, was used to transport parts to LaGuardia on January 3rd. It was then transferred to Eastchester Depot on January 26th, given an MTA bus tracker on the 29th, and re-entered service on the BXM-10 and BXM-7 on February 5th. This was a historic development, since it was the first time that a 4300 series MCI has been in service since November 3rd, 2022, and the first time that one has seen service at Eastchester. It is quite reminiscent to 2926's time at Eastchester. This single occurrence opened up the door for MCI and Prevosts transfers from New York City Transit to MTA Bus, namely Eastchester Depot, which would take place through July and early August. 2025 Prevost 1630 was transferred from College Point to Eastchester on January 15th, with its first run out of Eastchester occurring on January 17th on the BXM-10, where it remained until February 21st, when it was ultimately sent back to the South Plainfield Prevost facility. Its last run out of Eastchester was conducted on February 19th on the BXM-7. Trade war disputes may have made this order difficult to deliver for a few months. Thanks a lot, Shitler. Keep in mind, Prevost did shift to Canada, so we didn't get any word from Prevost for a few months, so Eastchester Depot was quite busy during early 2025. XN40 673 was officially written off on January 25th, making it the first MTA XN40 to officially retire. NextGen's 4166, 4468, 4520, 4522, and 4626 out of Baisley were loaned to College Point. JFK received LFS Coneheads 9023, 9096, and 9098, which brought them up to 178 Coneheads and left them with one more unit to inherit. LaGuardia received LFS Coneheads 9226, 49-50, 52, 54-57, 9260, 62-64, and 9269 to 9271, which bumped their total from 62 to 77 units. That allowed them to send NextGen's 4571, 80, 87, 98, and 4601 to Stengel, and 4394, 4397, and 4541 to East New York. 4497 was retired, and 4490, 4495, 4508, and 4512 were sent to Eastchester Scrap, which reduced LaGuardia's NextGen total from 35 units to 21, listed here. Now, regarding the ex-New Jersey Transit 2008 MCI D4500 CTs at the MTA, 2200 was sent from Spring Creek Storage to Zariga on October 11th, and 2199 was repainted into the MTA white and blue scheme on November 4th. 2199 to 2200 were assigned to Spring Creek on December 5th, becoming the first two ex-New Jersey Transit MCIs to be assigned and delivered to an MTA depot. 2199 was on its way to begin a trip on January 3rd, but it broke down in the Queens Midtown Tunnel, so its trip was aborted, which slightly delayed the NJT MCI's re-debut into service under the MTA. 2197, 2204, and 2206 were delivered to Spring Creek, joining 2199 to 2200, which had been there since December. By that point, Spring Creek now had 5 ex-New Jersey Transit MCI D4500 CTs, but none of them were in service. At College Point, the oldest 2004 D4500 CL 3007 was retired on January 17th, with its last run having occurred in July 2024. It was also retired along with 3280. That left 7 2005 D4500 CLs active in the system, 4 of which are 3000 series units, 3020, 3040, 3066, and 3082. Here were some express bus loans and transfers which took place. The winter pick took effect on January 5th, resulting in some extraordinary fleet changes. LFSAs 5444 to 5467 were given back to Quill for M60 select bus service after being at Mother Claire Hale throughout 2023 to 2024, when the route still belonged to them. Their racks were gradually removed. XHE40 5003 became the first electric to run on the route since it was returned to Quill on February 11th, followed by XHE60 4953 on February 19th. 10 LFSAs listed here were given to Mother Claire Hale for M125 service. These were the first units to be given. However, they now have 17 2012 LFSAs which are listed here, many of which came from Tuskegee. They were given to Hale for M125 service. The last Tuskegee LFSAs to run on the M125 were 5261, 5265, 5914, and 5918, which ended up at Hale later. The first XD60 to run on the M125 after the pick was 6220 on January 5th. The first XDE40 to run on the route was 9499 on January 9th. Meredith officially closed down on January 3rd, being dealt a blow just like the Air Nomads, which had caused the Sim 4X to go to Charleston, the Sim 15 to go to Yukon, and the Sim 3, Sim 30 to Sim 35 to go to Castleton as previously expected. As a result, various equipment was shifted out. Of course, the Meredith Prevosts had to go, so 1557 to 1571 were given to Castleton, 1572 to 1586 were given to Charleston, and 1587 to 1606 were given to Yukon, along with all of the 2012 Prevosts. Meredith's last three 2015 to 16 Prevosts, 27, 51, 53, and 56, were moved to Castleton. We had a snowstorm on January 19th, which prompted several snow loans to be dispatched throughout the boroughs. 4691 was loaned to Hale, while 4693, 9417, and other XDE40s and LFSHEVs from Manhattanville, as well as all of West Farm's XD40s, were loaned to Gun Hill. Several JFK NextGens were loaned to Baisley Park, while several LFSHEVs were loaned to Mother Claire Hale, while several XD40s were loaned from Fresh Pond to Quill. And here were some notable runs which took place within the month. Finally, on January 11th, the MTA announced a 265 XE40 order to retire the 2011 buses, that including the 3rd gens, XD40s, and LFSs. An XHE40 Demo also made its way to Gun Hill on January 16th, but I don't believe this is the official model.